Nobody told you it was urgent. Nobody told you they needed an immediate reply. The person sending it at no point has ever been like, if you don't reply urgently, like that pisses me off. Like there's been nothing ever that has told you that you have to reply immediately, but you see that Slack come in or you see that email come in and we're like, ugh. So I think like one of the first things that we have to do is acknowledge that all of us have a bit of this internalized sense of false urgency and is not based on reality. It is based on our imagination, like 99% of the time. And so much of it is embedded in the fact that getting all of those pings and getting the replies are serious dopamine triggers. So the more you get those pings and the more you reply immediately, the more you're wiring your neural pathways to like feel the need to do that. So like first, acknowledge that you probably are operating with a sense of urgency that is unnecessary and that to counteract that, you have to resist it, like you have to fight that temptation a bit. And then you can put in some of these like coping mechanisms, such as making your Slack offline, putting an away message. And if people are looking for a takeaway to do after this call, like block 30 minutes, show up to that 30-minute block with an idea of what your key result area is, pull up that urgent v important matrix, and then go through your calendar and kind of audit your calendar to see how much time you're spending on things that maybe are not as important as you think they are. I've gone through this exercise with like hundreds and hundreds of sales reps. And what I find every single time is that they default to putting way more stuff in the urgent category that is not urgent. And the pivot, folks, as you're auditing your calendar, is that there is a difference between being time sensitive and urgent. So like if you are in a land and expand motion, or if you are responsible for renewals, it is time sensitive that you are having those renewal conversations.
Yeah.
But it isn't urgent, because urgent means that it's a surprise. Like urgent means it is something that we could not plan for and that we could not schedule time to handle.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Customer Success Talks, Real Challenges, Experts Advice, the podcast dedicated to helping those transitioning into customer success and early career customer success managers. I'm your host, Byron Toruño, and just like you, I'm still learning about this amazing world of customer success. And what a best way than having a conversation with a lot of amazing professionals out there, with many with decades of experience, other ones who are in the battlefield every single day in customer success as well. And we have seen that now with almost 105, 108 episodes live, 3 years of recording, and appreciate all of the love that you are sending over as well. This is super motivating, and we can see how every time in every episode, there's always a different topic. We are sitting in such an amazing area in called customer success, where we can learn a lot for professional and also personal. And today is not the exception. Today we will be learning about productivity. But as I was thinking about this, me myself having challenges on how can I be productive? If there's so many things hitting the fan every single day, how can I prioritize? How can I be proactive? How can I be that CSM that actually hits the numbers? And it's easy to say that done. I know, but that's why we want to tackle this episode today on the productivity side, focusing on the revenue at the same time, right? And thank you to Jen Allen, who gave the amazing recommendation to our guest today, Leslie Venetz, who has the perfect combination from sales, also in CS, and also on the productivity hacks side of things. So today with us, we have Leslie Venetz, who is top 1% B2B sales expert. It's also speaker and founder of the Sales-Led GTM agency with nearly 2 decades in sales, including over 250,000 cold calls and training thousands of sellers across the 4 continents. Leslie knows firsthand what it means to actually focus. It's like when you're going to take a picture and you need to focus on one area and then everything gets blurry. That's how I vision Leslie. So I want to see Leslie if this analogy is correct. but you are also the author of the top 50 USA Today best-selling book, Profit Generating Pipeline. Welcome, Leslie, to Customer Success Talks, and thank you so much for your time.
Well, I am just so delighted to be here. I was sharing before we went live that having the opportunity to speak to this audience of CS folks really gave me a moment to reflect on times in my career where I've
Nice.
had the opportunity to own CS or to work really closely with the CS team. So it's like, yeah, some really beautiful memories.
That's nice. That's nice that this is happening today here. But I also want to touch a little bit about your book. I haven't had the chance to read it. It will come to my house soon. But what will people expect from your book?
Yeah, so the title of the book is Profit Generating Pipeline. So, as you might expect, there are a lot of strategies and techniques in the book focused on top of funnel, focused on how to build that profit generating pipeline. But I think what sits below that is a broader conversation on how to earn the trust and earn the confidence, earn the revenue of our customers and potential customers. So it's a three-part book. Part one is very much focused on leadership in the
Mm.
revenue profession, both from a lens of a sales leader or revenue leader, but also like as sales professionals in general, like how should we be redefining the profession and ditching some of those toxic narratives that like
Mm.
we're coin operated or all that really gross stuff that we've often heard about folks that are in revenue. The second part is very much focused on the strategies and the techniques that earn trust and drive revenue. So while it is a top of funnel book, like I am already getting so much feedback from folks that are in marketing or
Mm.
in CS or in account management about little pieces of the technique that they've applied to the work they're doing and gotten results. And then the last part, which is quite applicable to our conversation today, is how to make it repeatable. So we do talk a lot in those chapters about some of the productivity elements or some of the maybe prioritization techniques that I use and that I teach my teams and that I teach my clients to make sure they aren't just trying something one time and then getting distracted, that they are figuring out how to make it repeatable so that they can make it scalable.
Well, let's jump into that. How to make it repeatable, because that's one of the challenges. It's like, okay, today I'm hearing this podcast. I'm hearing Leslie what she's saying. Okay, I'm gonna apply this. Damn it, it doesn't work. Or then it's not that it doesn't work. It's that sometimes we have to have a little bit of patience when applying something to also adjust it a little bit. But then something jumps in, and it's like a fire turns here, a fire, another fire there. So how to make something repeatable and scalable?
Yeah, it is so hard to not be reactive,
So
isn't
hard,
it? It's
so hard,
so hard. I hear you.
so hard.
Um, last year I had the opportunity to speak at HubSpot's event Inbound, and one of the things I kept back to over and over again during that session was if it's not repeatable, it's not scalable. To the point that
Yeah.
last week I opened up my email and I saw an email from Inbound, like getting people to get interested in the 2026 event, and I read the subject line and then like the first two lines of the intro, and I thought, oh my gosh, like that sounds just like something I would talk about. And I opened up the email and then it was a summary of my session from the year before. So I was like, okay, well, at least I'm really consistent in my
Yeah.
talking points.
Showing the impact to yourself there.
Yeah. So how I feel like there's a couple things happening in that question. Like, how do we resist the urge to be reactive? How do we choose a lane or choose a strategy and then sit in it for long enough to really determine whether or not we can get the results that we want from it? And maybe more generally, like how do we exercise more patience in life?
Mm.
I don't know if I'm the expert on patience. I don't know if that's something that my friends and family would say is one of my like top 10 skills. What I know as an operator, as a revenue
Mhm.
professional, is that if we are not willing to test something for at least 30 days,
Yeah.
and generally I do 90-day tests and 90-day sprints, then we are never going to build the data foundation that allows us to understand what good looks like. And if we don't know what good looks like we don't have that standard, then we deprive ourselves of opportunities to be creative, because creativity feels more dangerous if we don't know like what results we're getting from it. We deprive ourselves of the opportunity for those like incremental improvements, those continuous improvements. And obviously, if we don't have that data foundation because we're not letting something go for that 30 to 90 day um, cycle to really test it, then we can't build things that are repeatable because we don't actually know
Mm.
what's repeatable and like what is building those sustainable business models.
Mhm. Is there any strategy that you apply to like maybe separate some of the time to just have time to create during the day? Because something that I think about most of the time to motivate myself into, yeah, be creative, but also thinking about the future is like I'm investing 30 minutes per day or 1 hour on this, thinking the bigger impact is going to have in the future. So that's the way I also motivate myself. And I use my calendar to literally set everything there and create boundaries for myself. Is there any specific tactic that you use on your end to motivate yourself to actually experiment?
I love that. It sounds like I'm probably doing some of the same things that you are doing.
Okay, I'm going to the right
Um,
direction.
Yeah, yeah, and, if you look at all of the, like, greatest thinkers through time, something that they repeat over and over again is that they have to have that time and that space to just think thoughts.
Mm.
And something that I've seen a lot of conversations about recently, like, I actually saw, like a meme, a GIF, whatever, on Instagram that I thought really beautifully encapsulated this idea, and the first bar was how a professional athlete operates. It's train, 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 execute, train, 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 execute, right? Like it's a ton of training and preparation. And then it's that moment where you show up to give it your best. And then it said, how corporate professionals are expected to show up. And it's execute, 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 execute that one random day of training, execute, right?
And
So,
that I feel sorry to interrupt here, Leslie, but I feel that that happens a lot when one is looking for a job as well. It's like you get hired and then okay, plug and play. And then okay,
yeah.
where's the time also to experiment, to sit down, to be onboarded, to I don't know, it's a bit of a criticize that I have on the industry as well. But it's
Oh,
interesting that
yeah.
you see it in that perspective. Execute, 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 execute.
Yeah, and I mean, think about even some of the language that we use when we're hiring or onboarding. It's like we want somebody that can hit the ground running. We want something that can get up to speed fast. Like from day one, even as we think about onboarding new reps into the profession or into the job, we're immediately trying to figure out like hacks to avoid having to properly train them and properly onboard them.
Ouch.
Yeah, so you're so right. But okay, so thinking about some of the things that you do with your calendar that I also do with my own, and they're things that I have, taught all of the reps I've managed that I work with my clients on. Batching is one of them. So often batch creation is also called clustering. And it just means that I am either taking a bunch of like for like activities and I'm
Mm.
holding time on my calendar to do all of them at the same time. So, an
Mm.
example of how I would do this as a seller is
Mhm.
that I would make an hour of phone calls. And the only thing I did during that hour was make phone calls. I did not stop to like send follow up emails, to put in CRM notes. I just made my phone calls. And then I would block an hour immediately after that. And that's when I would update my CRM, like send my emails, prepare my decks. So even a small shift like that, where you are blocking time to do phone calls and then time to do all of the things that might be required of you after those phone calls, it allows you to not be task switching so often. So you can
Mm.
both accomplish more in the singular task that you're working on, and you can do it with like a higher level of efficiency because you're focused on
Mm.
that specific thing and really being excellent at it. So when I think of batch creating, I think clustering tasks is a maybe underutilized way to batch create. And then there's also what many of us do when we batch create. And it's certainly something that I lean on heavily in my business now with all of the content creation I do, where I will sit down and have a half day, sometimes a full day blocked. And the only thing I'm doing for that entire day will be writing LinkedIn posts or recording YouTube long form or something where I am doing the singular task and just doing it for like a half day, a full day. So
Mm.
that's one thing I heard that you're doing that I certainly
But
replicate.
I'm definitely not doing it organized way. I feel that you're doing it more like in a hyper focus, um, in a same theme or same topic. Phone
Yeah.
calls, only cold calls, and then the follow up, and then a full day off. So you're hyper focusing on proactive approaches and letting the reactive away. Am I translating that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'll say something that is really, really challenging about this. This was particularly true when I was in corporate. I think certainly as a seller, but especially as a sales leader, is that I would block my like 2 hours of time where I was maybe going to do self development.
Mm.
And then it's so easy to be like, but I can move it an hour later. But like this call is really urgent. So
Yeah.
I'll make it an hour and a half instead of 2 hours and put this call in. And what happens is that we have that creep of everything else that we want to accomplish, those reactive tendencies, they start to take over those time blocks. So I will say that I think it's especially difficult in a corporate environment to resist the temptation to give that extremely important time away, like that time where you are upskilling, that time where you are like carving out moments to just be thoughtful, to just think through things more intentionally, more strategically. That when I'm auditing reps' calendars is often the first thing that they'll cave on and give away. And I would
Mm.
argue that it is probably the most important thing that they're doing all week, besides like the specific revenue generating activities that data says we're really only spending about 30% of our time on.
And they tend to be the ones with the most impact, right? In revenue wise.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. Because I hear this a lot with like in the founder communities that I'm in right now, or like the CEO communities, is that we often get stuck working in our business, which prevents us from working on our business. But I think that's so applicable to
Oh,
the work, like for revenue operators, I think that's really applicable as well, right?
yeah.
That like, let's say you are a, customer success manager, you're maybe like a year into a new role and you were like drinking from a fire hose. They had you hit the ground running, and so you're finally a year in and like feeling like you can get your feet under you. Taking time to step back and like really reflect on what went well the year before, what isn't going well, what your goals are for the coming year, like how the corporate mandates may be difficult for you based on your particular skill sets and what you might want to learn to like to help you cope with that, or like what you think your team is going to be able to do really well. Like we so rarely give ourselves like a day of time to just really think through all of those bits and pieces. But what I find is that when any professional, let alone like a revenue professional or somebody in CS, takes the time to step back and spend at least a day, maybe a day a quarter, thinking about the business, working on the business instead of working in the business, it means that everything else that
Mm.
happens after that in the business happens more efficiently.
Yeah.
And I've also seen it just really impact some of those like maybe less tangible things, like when you take the time to be more intentional and strategic about your approach, your team trusts you more,
Mhm.
right? So you're also getting better work for them. You're getting higher retention. You are taking a more strategic approach to how you are interacting with all of your accounts, or how you're enabling your team to interact with their account. So you get higher renewal rates and higher like cross sell and upsell rates. So I know that it's so hard because we tend to over index on like all of the small wins with
Yeah.
every employee or at every account level, giving yourself maybe a day once a quarter to work on the business instead of in the business, I promise that's going to make everything happening in the business better.
I love that. It's so interesting what you're saying because it's actually things that we can apply.
Hmm.
Although they're difficult, there are things that we can literally apply. I mean, who doesn't have 3 hours per quarter just to sit down to think about the business that we are already working in? And I feel that if I start implementing that, I will be able to create a plan or co-create a plan with my leader as well towards how to attack the next quarter, which will also by default make me as well proactive and make me hit the revenue goal or the retention or the renewal that I'm thinking because it feels like there's already structure that I separate per day that I can execute on a daily basis.
Yeah. And you just hit on something extremely important when you said you're going to like co-create that plan with your leader or with your manager. That's essential. Like, I am not suggesting that everybody in the audience just goes and like blocks a full day off their calendar and they're like,
I,
okay, like
um,
I'm out of here, like bye.
that's what Leslie said.
Right, right. It needs to be something that is communicated. So I even see resistance come up for folks when I suggest they block 1 or 2 hours from their calendar. And a lot of the resistance comes from like, well, what if somebody is trying to reach me and they can't? Like,
Mm,
first of all, nothing that any of us do is so important that it cannot wait a hour,
yep.
right?
Yep.
But a few things that folks might want to install in their workflows, maybe they don't feel capable of doing a full day. Like maybe that feels terrifying and overwhelming. Here's some steps that you can take in between. One is when you are time blocking, set mini out of office replies. And so in
Oh.
Slack, like update so that you are offline. So that if
Mhm.
people are trying to Slack you or trying to Teams you, they see that you're offline. In your email, even, almost all of us have the functionality in an email where we can send a reply to anybody in our address book versus
Mhm.
not sending it to people that are out of our address book. But even if you don't, I don't think it really matters. So you can set a mini out of office reply, mini away message that says, like, I'm heads down in meetings from 11 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. today. I will not be checking my email. Like I will start catching up on emails after 2:30 and will aim to reply to anything urgent before end of business today, but like please be aware it may take a day or two until I get your email replied to.
Mm.
Right? And so there's these like little things that we can set so that we don't feel um like pressure. We don't like so here's how I would frame it
So
is that we
psychological powerful.
yeah, and
Yeah.
we as people that operate in corporate America have this internalized sense of false urgency. And so
Mhm.
when I am starting to work with reps, when I'm starting to work with teams on how to better manage their time, how to have better prioritization, really breaking down that internalized sense of false urgency is so important because I think we've all felt it. I would bet everybody listening to this has felt it where you like get a Slack message and it is not urgent. Nobody told you it was urgent. Nobody told you they needed an immediate reply. The person sending it at no point has ever been like, if you don't reply urgently, like that pisses me off. Like there's been nothing ever that has told you that you have to reply immediately, but you see that Slack come in or you see that email come in, and we're like, ugh, ugh.
Especially if it comes from a specific stakeholder or your CEO or your manager. I think that that's a triggering factor as well.
It is. It is. So I think like one of the first things that we have to do is acknowledge that all of us have a bit of this internalized sense of false urgency and is not based on reality. It is based on our imagination, like 99% of the time. And so much of it is embedded in the fact that getting all of those pings and getting the replies are serious dopamine triggers. So
Uh-huh.
the more you get those pings and the more you reply immediately, the more you're wiring your neural pathways to like feel the need to do that. So like first, acknowledge that you probably are operating with a sense of urgency that is unnecessary, and that to counteract that, you have to resist it, like you have to fight that temptation a bit. And then you can put in some of these like coping mechanisms, such as making your Slack offline, putting in an away message. But to come back to the thing that you messaged or mentioned about co-creating some plans with your leader, like this, it is essential that you kind of manage up and manage down, that you explain this way of operating to your team. So that if
Um,
previously you always were somebody that replied within the hour, and now you're going to maybe try to only reply to emails at 8 a.m., noon, and 5 p.m., you've told your team that, so that as expectations and
yeah.
operating ways shift, they know what to expect. And then you also need to manage up, and you need to have that conversation with your leader, because your leader is probably struggling with many of the same things.
Yeah.
So you need to help them understand why you're doing this and what the outcomes you expect are, and why it's so essential for you to protect those time blocks for batching or for clustering, whatever, or for learning that you put in your calendar. So if you don't feel ready to jump all the way to like blocking a half day, maybe start with examining your relationship with urgency and with that dopamine, resetting expectations with your team and with your manager, and then starting with shorter time blocks.
You are indeed mega passionate about productivity.
I am,
It's
I
cool.
I talk about this in the book, but I moved from like a small town of about 60,000 in a state called Montana, and then I moved to Chicago, which is like, 6 million plus plus. I moved here without a job, just like hoping for the best. I got a job. I did not want to do sales. Like I wasn't called to the revenue profession at
For
all. I
real.
actually kind of thought it was like a little bit icky, right? Because we don't know what we don't know, and people had always said terrible things about salespeople.
Yeah.
So I am in this sales job, realize that I'm actually extremely gifted at it,
Mm.
because I like to help, I like to serve, I am curious, all of that. 6 months in, my manager gets fired and I inherit her team of 6 sales reps, because I was like the only person that had managed people prior to this like first corporate sales job. So here I am, I'm like 23, I'm 6 months into my first corporate job, my first like big time sales job. I'm managing a team of 6. All of them are at least like 10 years older than me.
Oh,
And
wow.
in this environment, I was also responsible
I don't know if
for,
that's the worst or the best case scenario.
well, let me tell you. Um, in this environment, I was also responsible for like all recruitment, where literally we were like writing and posting our own job ads, and then running like the full recruitment funnel, onboarding as I was a team lead role, so I was still carrying my own quota while I was managing a team of 6. Like it was a sales manager role, but they just had their leaders carrying a bag too. So I was responsible for my own quota as well as my team's, and it was truly full cycle. So we were finding the leads, doing the prospecting, generating the meeting, running the sales cycle, closing the sales cycle,
Wow.
and then owning the relationship afterwards. So we also
Mm.
owned CS, right? So this is like a crazy job. I am
Yeah.
doing I am juggling my own quota. I am juggling these 6 experienced sellers that I just inherited in my first ever sales management job. I am juggling all of this back end stuff, the like recruitment and onboarding, as well as the full sales cycle through to CS. And I share all of this chaotic energy because I realized one day that I went home and I had worked like a 10-hour day, and I had been really
Yeah.
working all day, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm on the train home, and I was like, what the heck did I even do today? Like, what? I know I was busy all day. I know I worked hard all day, but like, literally, what did I accomplish? And I couldn't think of a single thing that I accomplished that like meaningfully progressed my goals. And that was the moment that I was like, this is not a sustainable way of operating as a leader, as a professional. And I started looking for answers. And that was also like the beginning of my journey into these types of questions, this conversation that
Yeah.
we're having now, and finding some strategies that worked for me and worked for my teams.
It's so dangerous to get into that point, I think, right? Like we do so many things per day But then when we have some time to meditate, consciously or unconsciously, maybe cooking, maybe taking a shower, maybe just eating, walking around, because we also have our personal life, independently of this is a business customer success podcast. We also have our things to do. And just finishing the date, and it's just like, what the heck I did. But actually, we do a lot, but we just don't feel maybe that it's not generating impact because they might not be that reactive, or we just like do them and then let them go. And that's part of the productivity that I want to actually implement on my day to day. Is not to get into to that point and say, oh my God, I feel that I'm not doing nothing. Actually, I'm
Yeah.
doing things, but I don't visually see them. And you mentioned here batching or clustering and prioritization. You also mentioned email. So let's break this down a little bit, Leslie. When you talk about clustering in your calendar and prioritization, what factors do you take into consideration that are the most important ones to make sure that that time that you block is really, really impactful, especially towards the revenue side?
Okay, so let's take a step back, I
Right.
would say. The way that I think about everything, and I've been doing this since that first sales job where I was like, oh my God, like what am I doing here? I'm working so hard all day, but I'm so
Yeah.
busy doing firefighting and being reactive that I'm working hard without actually accomplishing anything. And one of the things that I did was I like went to Google. It was just like, help. And I found a video from this guy called Peter Turla. It was a YouTube video. I think his handle is at the Time Man. And he shared that he was a NASA scientist, and he shared this story kind of having that similar feeling of like working hard and working all day. And at the end of the day, not being sure what he accomplished. And he was looking around at all of the other NASA scientists. And at 5 o'clock, they're like tidying their papers and getting up to leave for the day. And he's like, oh my gosh, I still have so much work to do. So we interviewed a bunch of them, and a thing that came up over and over again was clear prioritization. And so what Peter Turla shares in this video is the idea of a KRA, or key result area. We can all think of it as sort of our like North Star at work. And
Right.
I think it is a little bit easier for us as revenue professionals because we have a very clear North Star because it is our revenue goal, right? But maybe
Yeah.
you have some different goals. Like maybe your number one goal is that you want to get promoted to a new job title in the
True.
next year. Maybe your number one goal is actually by the end of the year, like I want to have enough money in savings that I can quit this job and do this passion project. So you can have multiple North Stars, but the key is it's one thing. And
One
so
thing.
if I think back to that job where I was managing all of the things, I was constantly distracted because I was saying yes to and trying to work on everything that was under my job purview. And I lacked the understanding of what my key result area was, so I couldn't prioritize. I didn't know
Mm.
where to spend the majority of my time, and I certainly didn't know what to say no to. So, what I determined in that role is that the thing that was most important to me was having my reps hit quota. Because if my
Okay.
reps were hitting quota, it meant that there was higher retention. So I didn't have to spend as much time doing like, all of the hiring and onboarding stuff. So it kind of reduced that. That if my reps were hitting quota, it meant we were spending more time in revenue generating activities, which meant that because I was leading by example, I was doing the same thing. So I was more likely to hit quota. So I didn't have to spend as much mental energy on that. And it also meant that we were spending a lot more time doing the specific activities that I knew were most closely tied to revenue. So when I
Mm.
recalibrated and I made my North Star having 100% of my team hit 100% of quota or more, it gave me a lens through which anytime somebody was like, oh, can you do this? Or can you do this? Or can you move that meeting to do this? It was very easy for me to ask myself,
Mhm.
does this support my KRA? Does this support my key result area? Or doesn't it? And I realized very quickly that I was saying yes and spending time on a lot of things that, yeah, were like sort of roughly in my job, or
Mm.
things maybe that like I could do well, but they were not the things that were a straight line that directly impacted 100% of my reps hitting 100% of their revenue.
You're
So I would
filtering.
suggest that everybody, yeah, like take the time to really figure out what their KRA is and to remember that it is a single thing. It cannot be multiple things. It can only be one thing, and everything else has to like flow into it or get pushed aside.
Sorry, what is KRA? Maybe I missed it.
Key result area.
So that's attached to what you said about full blocking a day for reflection and planning. Is
That
it?
could be the first day. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do like now in my business as a full-time founder, I do my KRA really once at the beginning of the year, and then I'll look at it again in like August just to make sure that the goal I set for myself is still the right goal. But in corporate, I relooked at it every quarter because things move quickly and so it might change. It often didn't change because especially in that role, like having 100% of my reps hit 100% of quota, that's a pretty consistent deliverable that the organization
Not bad.
was expecting of me. But like later, I was ready to leave that job. And so my key result area was actually to set myself up to get my next job. So then it did shift a little bit that it was like, I want to make sure that I have like the brag book or like the dashboards that make me look like a really prestigious employee. And I spent a little bit more time with some of my best clients so that I could ask them for referrals and testimonials. So my KRI did shift at one point, and that shifted how I prioritized things because I needed to be a little bit more selfish to make
Yeah.
sure that I was doing what I needed to do for my career.
Yeah.
So it's not that it never changes, but I look at it once a quarter just to sense check, but it often stayed the same.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Learning how to say no, being selfish doesn't necessarily mean being a bad person. Being
No.
selfish is also about being thinking about ourselves, our future, and what motivates us. And if we feel that we're stuck doing reactive stuff that we have to do, of course. But if we also plan and reflect and have that filter of where I know where my plan, I know where I need to create the impact, having that filter, being selfish and saying no, that's what I'm translating what you're saying. It
Yeah.
basically means being proactive in some way or another. Interesting.
Yeah. I like that, just like that summary and that clarity. And what I would add to it is that I often find especially leaders, are actually being very, very selfish, but they don't
Uh-huh.
realize it because they are doing the things that make them feel good in the moment, which means
Uh-huh.
they are unintentionally sacrificing what is best long term for themselves, for their team, for the organization.
Uh-huh.
And so if we look at something like constantly and immediately replying to every email and every Slack message and every text that comes in, that is an extraordinarily selfish behavior. You are doing it because it triggers your dopamine and it feels good to your brain. And sure, it might stress you out and you might bitch about it, but like the reason you're doing it is because you're getting dopamine hits, not because it's actually what's best for you or your team or your organization. So it's such a funny thing that by being selfish intentionally, we're actually making ourselves stronger leaders, better leaders of our team, better leaders within our organization, outside of our organization. Whereas if we are just sort of being selfish unintentionally and doing what feels good in the
Ah.
moment, we're setting ourselves up for failure in the long term.
Let's be intentional selfish then. Leslie, there are two topics before we close today's episode that I hope we have time to touch on. So, one is the emails, and they're so loud, and same with Slack or internal messages. On the other side, you just touch on so many things that I need to filter and decide which one to prioritize. And I think that the one that I really want to touch on and not leave aside is in a perfect day, we have our clustering, we are proactive, we are intentional, selfish, but there are some things, some stuff, some tasks that we are leaving aside because
Yeah.
they're reactive. What happens with those? Do we just leave
Yeah.
them under the carpet?
Yeah. 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 Okay. So let me share a few things. One, before we went live, you actually told me that you had gotten my out of office reply.
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I love. So I follow the teachings, the work of a guy called Cal Newport, Calnewport, really, really closely. So when anybody sends me an email, they actually get an automatic reply. It's always set up. It doesn't matter if I'm in office or out of office. They're always getting my away message that tells them that I follow Cal Newport's deep work methodology. So unless their email is truly urgent, to expect a 3 to 5 day delay in reply. So yeah, our inboxes are super, super, super hectic.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I do straight away so that I'm reducing like that sense of urgency and that burden for myself to feel like I have to reply. And then when I am ready to respond to emails, I can time block that. So that's a cluster. So then I'm sitting down and I'm responding to all of my emails instead of like an email
Oh,
here, an email there, an email there.
including chats. So all of that you said, like, let's put that aside. It's all within the call Newport's deep work method. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah.
Ah,
Yep. And like I have an away message set in my LinkedIn inbox as well. That's like I don't reply. Like this inbox is full. I do not reply to direct messages here. And then I route people to other places to find me. Like if you're a sales leader and you want to learn about working together, book time directly into my calendar. So instead of taking my very, very valuable time, like responding to DMs that don't achieve my key result area, which for me this year is 26 paid or big stage speaking gigs in 26 and 2026.
yeah.
I'm routing people to the resources that they would need. And then when it's time to look, I scan for those specific opportunities that fulfill my key result area. And if they don't, I just don't reply. So that's one thing that I will share that like I really, really, really value. To answer your other question about like what do we do with all of these other tasks? There's two ways of thinking. So the one that I have developed for myself is do, delegate, delete, diarize. And so what that means is that if it is something that I'm going to do, I need to make a real commit to that. So like if it's something really, really short, I'll put it on my to-do list. And then when I have a cluster for like to-do list tasks, I'll go through the to-do list. But if it's anything that I think is going to take 15 minutes or more, I immediately put it on my calendar as a task, as a time block. And it sounds like you do something similar where you're actually like blocking time in your calendar for every task. Yeah. So that means that I'm highly more likely to
Yeah.
do it because I am acknowledging that like every little thing does take time. And so I'm holding
Mhm.
time in my calendar to
Yeah.
do it. If I find that it is a task that I just am always like moving later in my calendar, like it's the thing on my to-do list that always ends up on the bottom, that's a
Yeah. Yeah.
signal to myself to ask if it's something I can delegate, or in general, I'm sort of auditing my calendar to be like, is this something I can automate or delegate? And I do
Yeah.
that a lot. I hired an administrative assistant a few months ago. I also built a ton of like pretty robust Claude prompts to automate things that I don't need to be doing. But if it can't automate it and I can't delegate it, and I'm not willing to do it, then I'm like, is it actually that
Exactly.
important?
That's a red flag. Yeah.
Right? And so then
Yeah.
often I just delete things. Like I put things on my to-do list because somebody said it or I think it might be interesting and it stays on there and I'm constantly not prioritizing it and moving it along. It's not important enough to actually figure out how to automate it or to pay somebody to delegate it. So then
It
I'm
might
like,
even
okay, is
not
this
be
a
like a 2 minutes
delete?
task.
Totally. So often I
Mhm.
just give myself permission to cross things off. And then the final one is diarize, because there are things that I want to do, but it's not right now. It doesn't need to be done right now. It doesn't support my key result area today, but it doesn't mean it's a never.
Yeah.
And so then I will diarize those, meaning I'll put it on my like list for the next day that I have time to be really thoughtful, and I will revisit it in a way that's like, is now the time, or is it still not the time, or is that something that like even sparks joy and sparks interest for me anymore? So I call that putting things on my future Leslie list, where I don't have to say no, but I can say like it's not right now. So delegate, delete, or diarize. So that's one framework I use. And then the other one, and people should look this up and go through the exercise, is called the Eisenhower matrix. And then it was really popularized by an author called Stephen Covey, who wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Does that
Mm,
sound familiar? Have you read
yeah, I
that one?
haven't read it. Yeah, yeah, I have heard it.
Yeah, it's a really good one. And so he has a matrix called the urgent versus important matrix.
Mm.
And if people are looking for a takeaway to do after this call, like block 30 minutes, show up to that 30-minute block with an idea of what your key result area is, pull up that urgent v important matrix, and then go through your calendar and kind of audit your calendar to see how much time you're spending on things that maybe are not as important as you think they are. I've gone through this exercise with like hundreds and hundreds of sales reps, and what I find every single time is that they default to putting way more stuff in the urgent category that is not urgent. And the pivot, folks, as you're auditing your calendar, is that there is a difference between being time sensitive and urgent. So, like,
Mhm.
if you are in a land and expand motion, or if you are responsible for renewals, it is time sensitive that you are having those renewal conversations.
Yeah.
But it isn't urgent, because urgent means that it's a surprise. Like, urgent means it is something that we could not plan for and that we could not
Ah,
schedule time to handle. So I think that's like a big thing, is that folks are like, but it is urgent. Like, I have to do it now. And I'm like, right, but you've also known when this renewal date was since last year when the contract got signed and
that's
you
the
were
sensitive time part. Yeah.
totally. So it's something that you should plan for. That doesn't make it urgent. Like, almost nothing we do is urgent. Things that would be urgent are like, you got a client that said like, yes, we are actually ready to like re-sign, but only if you can get this to me today while my CFO's in office.
The surprises then.
That's a surprise, that's urgent. Or like, maybe it's your sales leader isn't very great at this, your CS leader isn't very great at doing time management and prioritization, and so they come to you and they're like, oh my god, Chelsea, like, I have to report to the board tomorrow and I need this dashboard from you and I have to have it by the end of the day.
Oh.
Like, that's probably not important in that it doesn't
Mhm.
support Chelsea's key result area, but that's urgent because you're not going to be like, sorry, too bad, manager. Like, I don't have time for that. So I think it's just, I love the urgent v important matrix through the lens of what is your key result area, because it really forces you to say, what am I treating as urgent that actually I'm just not planning for?
Yeah.
So I'm creating emergencies, I'm creating situations where I have to be reactive because of a lack of better planning. And what am I treating as important that doesn't actually support my key result area that maybe I can delegate or automate or delete?
There's no best way, Leslie, to end today's
No.
episode with all of these amazing gold insights that you're given, that you have also implemented, that you have probably also messed up, repeat, to readjust, to improve. So I really appreciate the time and all of the passion that you're bringing, that is connecting sales with customer success and productivity in one same place. Where can people find you?
Yes, I am a chronically online human. So my primary channel is LinkedIn. So you can find me at LinkedIn just under my name, Leslie Venetz. I'm pretty
Yep.
much on all socials just under my name, with the exception of TikTok, where I also have 50,000 followers. So join me there. And that's
Wow.
sales tips talk. And then, of course, if anybody wants to check out the book, it's called Profit Generating Pipeline. And it's at, you can get it from your local bookstores. You can get it pretty much from any online retailer. But yeah, check that out too.
All of the links will be in today's episode description. So just move a little, click here, click there, and you will find all of the links. The links. Thank you, Leslie, for your time again. Nice to meet you. And like I always say, everyone, remember, keep learning, keep growing, and let's keep improving the world of customer success. Until next time.